Resident Evil is one of the most influential and recognizable franchises in horror gaming, and just gaming in general, spanning over multiple titles with something like 12 mainline titles and a bunch of spin-offs. It's an awesome series filled with tons of awesome moments and scares. And over the years, it has flopped between scary and action-oriented, or both, depending on the title you play. Now, personally me, I got into the series in about 2005 with a game that was actually pretty controversial for the franchise at the time, for its more action-focused gameplay. And the game I'm talking about, of course, is Resident Evil 4. And this year, it's turning 20 years old. This game is almost old enough to drink. And for its age, for the most part, it's aged well. Still looking pretty decent to this day. With this being arguably one of the best games in the series, at least in my opinion and some other Resident Evil fans, it's not only that, also one of the best games of all time. I thought it would be really fun to go back to this classic and relive the nightmare and amazing story to see if this game is still as great as it was the day it came out. But before we begin, hi, I'm Keegan and I like to talk about games. If you like what you see in this video, be sure to give it a like and consider subscribing, as I'd greatly appreciate it and would love to have you here. But with all that out the way, let's take a look at Resident Evil 4 20 years later. So starting with the story, Resident Evil 4 takes place a few years after the incident in Raccoon City after the original trilogy, following the man, the myth, the legend from Resident Evil 2, Leon S. Kennedy. Now, working for the government as like this agent, he's been sent on a mission to rescue the president's daughter. It really blows my mind that they only sent one person, but you gotta love the action hero stuff. And not only that, he barely has any equipment either. They just sent him in with a pistol, a clip or two, and some first aid spray. It's wild, but I love it. The story itself is cheesy. It's a rescue mission with fun twists and turns, with fun villains and enemies to encounter. Like one of my favorite enemies from this game that you see later down the line, at least in Resident Evil 5, to my knowledge, the Chainsaw Guy. Don't actually know his name, but he's awesome. So the game, while silly at times, especially with Leon's awesome one-liners,
"I don't give a damn. Rain or shine, you're going down." Sounds more like an alien invasion if you ask me. I knew you'd be fine if you landed on your butt. Where's everyone going? Bingo?
it makes for an awesome time, feeling like this 80s, 90s kind of action movie. It's honestly a better story than what most of Hollywood is doing right now. But to be honest, I won't go into too much, at least I'll try not to for spoiler purposes. Though at this point you should have definitely played this game already, but with the remake out and being a whole thing, I'll try to keep the spoilers at a minimum. But to keep it short and brief, the story, awesome. You know, awesome characters, except Ashley. She's kind of trash, but other than her, you know, her main objective, it all makes for a good time. And for story-wise, it has aged very well in terms of just story in general. It's cheesy as fuck, but still one of my favorite stories of all time, no doubt. And probably the best story in the franchise, at least one of them. I think the original 3 did really well too, but all the way up to this point, they were killing it. Now, in terms of gameplay, it works. The whole standing still while shooting is kinda ass, and even a little stiff at times, but for the time that this game came out, it was fire. And it's still well-rounded to this day. I will say I like the gameplay way more in the remake. It's obviously smoother and just all around feels better, but the enemies are fun to go up against, like the Ganados and stuff, like the villagers. I like how the game kind of learns how you play. If you're whooping too much ass, the enemies will start trying harder and do different things and kind of throw left hooks at you. It's pretty rad. But I will say the worst gameplay mechanic of the entire game is definitely Ashley. She's just the worst, and it's why I'm haunted by the idea of doing any type of these escort missions in any game. It was awful at the time, and it's awful now. It's a little better in the remake, but even still. For 20 years old, though, it's really not all that bad, except for, you know, escorting Ashley around at times. But this is where the game It does start to feel like it's aged, probably more than anything, at least for me. Still not bad though. When it works, it feels great. But it definitely has some moments too that kind of bug me, like the QTEs that are a little ass, but to be honest, I've never really liked QTEs in most games. I think that it really only belongs in stuff like Telltale games and stuff like that, but otherwise, hate it. But other than all that, it works well enough. A little dated, but it's still fairly decent. So now we come to the visuals of the game, and I gotta say, the original still looks great. I mean, for 2005, this game looks beautiful, even to this day. Obviously, the remake that they did is just gorgeous, but the original 2005 RE4 still goes hard. I've always said that this game just ages kind of like fine wine, and it's probably the most preserved part of this older game. I mean, you gotta think of what we had in 2005. We had stuff like Red Dead Revolver, which is an awesome game, but it looked like shit. We had Gun, another Western game. Not really a looker either, or stuff like True Crime, New York City. Same deal. But Resident Evil 4 looks amazing still to this day, and definitely one of the best looking games out of the 2000s. The graphics went off, and while yes, it had the classic mid-2000s kind of brown filter over it, it felt warm but damp, and cozy but dreary. It was a perfect combination for this game. So to this day, I still think that Resident Evil 4 looks great. So all in all, this game has aged well. There are areas that they could have improved, which I think they did with the 2023 remake, but all around the board, this is still a solid banger of a game, from the fun but crazy story to the stiff but works well enough gameplay mechanics and the ass fucking escort missions, as well as the great visuals and even amazing soundtrack that lives rent-free in my head, which I totally almost forgot to mention. Just the save room theme is amazing. Just the score for this game is just top-notch. But to be honest, the classic RE games always had a bumpin' soundtrack, front to back. But getting back to Resident Evil 4, there is a reason this game has been a series favorite for most fans and has been for 20 years. Now, it blows my mind to think about that, how 2005 was 20 years ago, my childhood. Crazy. Lots of great games that year that I'll definitely have to cover going down the line this year, but this has always been one of my favorites in the series, and just it in general got me into the Resident Evil series, but also one of my favorite games of all time. Got me into horror games just in general. So this game holds a special place in my heart, and a special place in the hearts of tons of fans that probably got into the series just like I did with this classic. So, overall, does Resident Evil 4 still hold up 20 years later? Absolutely. Well, I thought the remake was amazing, and I actually probably play it right now more than the original, because it's one of my favorite remakes of all time. They didn't even need to do that. If they never remade this game, I wouldn't have been mad, considering what we still got. This game is an easy all-timer, and no matter how much time passes, I think that it'll always be. But what do you think? Has this game held up over the years? If you've played the game, what's your favorite moment from the original Resident Evil 4? Let's talk memories down in the comments. But anyways, if you made it this far in the video, thank you. You're awesome. I hope you enjoyed. And if you did, be sure to share, like, and subscribe to see more of what I've done and what's to come. I'd love to have you. But anyways, that's all I got for you today. Do the things. Have an awesome day. Thanks for coming. And thanks for watching.